Hello, I'm Doug Walker. This is...
Me.
That's me. I am you. You're me. I am you.
Me.
5 points if you know what movie that's from. Not Mini-Me, the I am you, but never mind. Okay, so this is...
Eunice.
Okay, that's a big clue if you... Well, not if you haven't seen the movie.
I haven't seen it, they have no clue what the hell we're talking about.
But you should see it anyway. Regardless, this is a new section we sort of wanted to try out because a lot of people, when we do a Nostalgia Critic review, they're like, well, how much of your real opinions is in there and stuff, and it's...
Just depends, really.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like
normally
a really
we try to
fair
pick bad
deal.
movies, so they're not particularly good. But sometimes, I don't know, we like a movie more than we're probably letting on, and other times we've done a movie where the reviews has been, yeah, this sucks, but deep down inside it hurt us on a very visceral level.
And one of the things with that, I think, is that they ask, well, is that what you really think? Are you really that angry? Usually I'm not quite that angry. Like, I can really hate a movie, but it's not like, God damn you, humanity, or something like that. There's a select few. Yeah, there's no select few. So, and on top of that, it's usually me in front of the screen, and, Rob's one of the writers, but he doesn't always get, a fair share. And there's a lot of times where you can really go into detail about these movies.
I get exactly what I deserve, sir.
And there's a lot of times we can really go into details about these movies, so we're doing this section now about our honest thoughts about a film.
So Sophie's Choice.
Yeah, let's talk. What a hack film. Sheesh. Downer.
I thought it was a comedy.
Wow. That'd be the darkest comedy of all time. So, yeah, this is a new section we're starting where we're going to do one right now on The Matrix, and then the next one's going to be Mamma Mia, because I know you have things to say, much more than I have to say about that. Like, that's actually one of his, top 3 hated movies you had to review for this.
I'll put it number 2.
Yeah, number 2. There you go. So definitely tune in for that, because there's going to be a lot of hate for that. But
it may just be me shouting like Doug. I don't know yet.
So, but we're gonna do our honest views on some movies we reviewed, and if you have any that you want us to talk about, doesn't have to be in any particular order, go ahead and mention it below. And we're gonna start off with The Matrix, because this is the one that people clearly have no strong opinions about at all.
While we were doing that, we could have done Man of Steel.
Right? I think Man of Steel got a better reception than, in terms of,
where
the
you
positivity.
go, because honestly, online, I found a number of people were just like, oh yeah, this movie, I thought
what it
always
is?
sucked. And I'm like, oh really?
No, you know what I found? And this is kind of fun I found, because since we've gone back on YouTube, I compare, our website and then what YouTube thinks, and it's almost always polar opposite. It doesn't mean one's right, one's wrong, or one's smart and one's stupid. It just goes back and forth.
Yeah, sometimes on YouTube they're like, but I like this movie. And other times on YouTube they're like, you're totally right, this movie sucks. While on our site they're like, how dare you, sir?
Yeah, no, you can never tell. So with The Matrix on our site, people seem to be like, yeah, it was... we can look back on pretty dated and silly and stuff like that. On YouTube, it's like, you cocksucking whore! You should talk about the sequels! And I did, and they only got half the amount that The Matrix got, which is always...
because they already know those suck.
Yeah, maybe. So I don't know, but whenever like, how can you talk about it? Well, first of all, it gets really good views, but that's not the reason. The reason really was that for years, that was the reaction I got.
Here's the thing, if you've commented on it, you've already clicked on the video, which means that was just views for us, so... That's why.
No, but there's people
I'm just letting you know. If you're like, why would you even bother? Well, you're commenting and asking us, and that just gave us a hint.
No, and there's people coming out like, I've watched it 5 times now, and I still don't get it.
Pissed.
It's like, yeah, oh no. So the views have really been on our website. It's been pretty. Yeah, I can see that. Even people are like, I kind of like it still, but whatever. And then on YouTube, they're like, mad as hell. I'm not gonna take it anymore. So this is a chance to talk about our real views on it. When I saw it in the theater, the first thing that jumped out to me really about it, apart from the effects and everything, is that it was so bizarre how the first half was almost nothing but talk, and the second half was nothing but action, and I found that really distracting. I thought they could balance it out a little bit, but it didn't destroy anything for me. I just thought it was a little full of itself, a little pretentious, but fun. You know, like, the effects.
You analyzed it way more than I did when I saw it. I just liked it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I mean. Like, you sort of looked at it, it's like, that was fun.
Yeah.
Cute movie. Like, I don't think you got, like, sucked in, like, oh, what's next? What's in the world? What, that blew my mind. That blew, because this...
Well, no, there were parts of it that really sucked me in, but I didn't think there was ever going to be a sequel. So I just took it at face value. I wasn't sucked into the world so much because there wasn't much to get sucked into. It's just like, oh, there's a Matrix, so there's this fake world, and then there's the real world, and the real world sucks, and the Matrix is actually the interesting part, and I like the idea, and then it ended with Neo flying off into space like Silver Surfer, and I'm like, okay, there it is, like the end, and...
Yeah, what's that going to open up? What's that going to mean? And, but then that turned into a huge hit, and they said more, and, well, we got... less. We got a few cool scenes in Reloaded, but yeah.
Sometimes less is more, and sometimes more is less.
Yes, Revolution was definitely pretty bad, but most people know what we think of the sequels, but we'll keep it to mostly the first one. The idea of there being another world, that we're not aware of, and, everything kind of being symbolic and stuff like that. It's like sci-fi has done this before. Dark City, I think, did it a bit more effectively. But I didn't bother me too much, really. I think
they were so close together that they were in their own bubble. I don't feel like, oh yeah, this was a ripoff of
No,
Dark
I don't
City.
feel that either. No.
Matrix is probably in production right when Dark City already came out.
Well, and again, it's an idea that's been done a lot, that our reality is an illusion. Just, spoiler, a lot of films and stories have done that.
And the strength of both Dark City and the first Matrix versus the Matrix sequels is it knew not to over talk about it.
Oh, I don't know. Matrix still had a lot. Remember, we were watching, man, like, they talk a lot of long-winded speeches.
They talk a lot, but compared to the sequels, it's still kind of
compared
nebulous.
to sequels, yeah.
It's like, well, okay, we've given you...
It kept some focus.
We've given you an idea of what this all means, but they didn't pick it the hell apart. Dark City did it even less. I mean, Dark City
was very vague, which I like about it.
Dark City is just almost like a Star Trek episode where it's just like, you were searching for here, and it's really in here, human, and the Matrix talked to death about it, but it knew how not to really overstay its welcome as much as the sequels did. Like, it gave you just enough that you're like, oh, well, I can ask questions of my own watching this. And then the next two films just proceeded to just answer a whole bunch of questions. I was like, I didn't need to know the answers to that. I want to figure out the answers for my damn self.
Well, I think you brought up a great point. Something I really like more in Dark City than The Matrix, or The Matrix touched upon, is that it does allow you, instead of shoving all this saying, answers, it's saying... what about these questions? Have you asked these questions? Have you considered these questions? And that's why I like Dark City a little bit more, because it is a little bit more vague. And I do like the style of Dark City more too, but, the funny thing about Matrix is that everyone's like, a lot of people say it was a very nitpicky review, and, at some points are right, it's like, okay, I'm doing this for comedy and such, but for me, the real biggie is the long-winded speeches, which don't kill the film, really. You kind of go, okay, because this is at a point when action films were just starting to be like, hey, maybe we can think... Because when you really think about film, even though I love a lot of action films, before we think about the 80s and, like, the early 90s and stuff, it was not a thinking man's medium. You could argue even today it's not necessarily, but there's an option now. And I think because of that, the long-windedness gets to me a bit, but the big thing is that the two leads are so boring. And I never got... Here's the thing. It's the journey of the hero. Fair enough. Luke Skywalker has to learn stuff, not only physically but emotionally. With the Matrix, everything's a plug-in. So he's like, I know Kung Fu. Show me. Okay, he knows Kung Fu. What spiritual, what philosophical changes did he have to really go through aside from, I know it's the Matrix? Okay.
You're missing something,
that's
though.
Kind of
it's only part one. I don't think it's actually a hero's journey as much in part one. There's a hero's journey.
All they talk about is how he's the one, you're the savior, you're the one who will bring balance. But what has he done? What is it about him?
But it's not about, if you look at it, I don't think it's really about him. Like, he is just, it's really, watch it, it's more about Morpheus.
I would like this movie a lot
really-
more if it was really about
really-
Morpheus. I don't
and
think
you
it
can-
is.
you can
I
claim
think it's
that they
about
put-
him.
that you
He's
can-
not the one the climax at the end. He's not the one saving the world. In fact, he's the one that has to be saved.
But it's Morpheus is the one who has to have faith that this clown they picked up who
But
has
you
no
know,
personality
it's not
is-
him on the front of the poster. It's always him in the background. He is not the focus. You know Keanu Reeves is the focus.
I'm saying if you want to say it's a hero's journey thing, all three of them together, yes. Because that's where they start bringing the shit in where he becomes literally this messianic character, but it's really very simple. Like, deceptively simple in the first one. It's, here is this object that Morpheus, who is the only, and the other characters really, was it Cypher? The Judas character.
Oh, Judas. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
call him Judas. I call him Italian Judas.
Italian Judas.
Italian fugitive Judas.
It's really about their reactions to finding this guy and them having faith in him. Luke Skywalker did way more, I think, in the original Star Wars, and that was more like a cut and dry hero's journey thing. Now, they do that in the sequels and develop it there, but for me, it's like the first one, Neo's just this guy. And you're right, they do just throw it at him and everything, but to me, that's because it's not really was about the hero's journey. Like, he's not even the most interesting character.
I don't know,
He's
look
some
at
sort of
it.
bland everyman that you just throw in. And
Well-
I guess that's always the case with Luke Skywalker, too. But
I will say that it's obvious they're trying to go for the every guy. You know, like this could be you. Anyone can be, you know, something great. You know, fair enough. It's not.
if it really was about the hero's journey, then Morpheus probably should have been dead by the end of the first movie. He never loses his sword master. You know, like Luke loses Obi-Wan or something.
Okay, it doesn't
There's
be
not a
word
lot
for
of-
word.
But
like
I'm
Star
saying,
Wars,
well,
you
but
know,
if you're going to
like-
use the hero's journey archetype, I don't think it's that
I didn't say they follow
much
it well.
of an example.
He doesn't
Okay.
have much of a character either. It doesn't mean it's, you know, well, this one had a lot of a character too, and this didn't. So clearly, it's not the archetype. I think it is. They just didn't do it very well.
I think if you watch it, most of the investment comes from Morpheus.
I will say this: out of all the characters, you know, Smith is just fun to watch. Hugo Weaving's just fun to watch. And Morpheus is the only one where I'm like, oh, I hope he doesn't die. Like, I like that because he knows what he's talking about. He's pretty badass. He actually does have a character. He even has an arc when you think about it. Like, his faith is kind of challenged and so forth, you know, much more than Neo does.
That's my point.
No, but he's not the main character. He's not, you know, at the very end, it's not Morpheus and Hugo Weaving having the fight. It's Neo and
Who
Hugo
comes out of that movie and says, you may want to be Neo because you can do the kung fu, but who comes out of that movie and says, yeah, that's the guy? Like, nobody. Everybody, you think of Morpheus. Hell, you even think of Trinity more. She's more in charge through half that film.
But that's my point. I think, even though it's supposed to be like he's learning and becoming strong and everything like a lot of Heroes' Journeys stories, we never really see much of the learning, and most importantly, you never see the emotional impact. I think at the most, when they come back, he's like, you know, that place had really good noodles. And even though we kind of made fun of it, I know what they were doing. They were trying to do like, oh, like now that he's back in here, he sees it different and the world looks a little different. It's like, fair enough. But the rest is all kung fu and just him fighting and saying, wait, we should go save him. And that's about it. You know, everything else is just the kung fu. So in your opinion, you think the main character of the movie is Morpheus?
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Do you think they had that in mind?
I don't know if they had that in mind, but that's what it comes off as.
Or is this kind of like your theory that the main character in Lord of the Rings is not Frodo, but it's Sam?
Oh Christ, it's not Frodo. Good Lord, no. Sam is the one that is the anchor of that story. Frodo's just the dude carrying the ring.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing.
By the end of
I'm
it-
saying, you know, trying to give context here.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of it, Frodo collapses and Sam like lifts him up and he's like, "I got this," and like carries him to the mountain. Like it's really.
Yeah, if anything, Frodo
at
kind of
any-
fucks it
at
up.
any key-
He's got it. He's like,
Yeah.
you know.
No, and if you read the book, it's the same thing. A lot of people will say flat out their favorite character is Sam or Gandalf, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you really look at it, the main character, and that happens a lot in stories. Like you'll find that supposedly the secondary character ends up kind of being the main character. Now, I'm not sure that works throughout the whole trilogy, which is why I'm saying if you look at the trilogy as a whole and count the sequels into it, you can say Hero's Journey. But if you're looking at the first film as a standalone film, which it was, it's not as much of a hero's journey as Star Wars, which was also a standalone film. We look at Empire and Jedi or whatever, but like when you look at that Star Wars, it's like that could have ended with that awards ceremony.
Even
just like it could have ended and should have in the Matrix's case with Neo taking off. You know, that was the point. It's about Morpheus finding this guy and saying, You are the one I was looking for. You're the one. I have faith in you. All of you other guys, you have to have faith that this idiot I found is the right idiot. And in the end, what happens? He says, I'm going to go free everybody, and does it. Morpheus's quest, in the first movie at least, is complete, and then they dragged it on through 2 sequels.
Okay, I will say this, though, because if the movie was about Morpheus and Neo was really more of, like, the side character, I would probably like that more. I'd probably enjoy it more. But at the same time, I mean, the only example kind of in my head right now is maybe Wicked, where it's like we're looking at the point of view as somebody different, where the main character, Dorothy from before, is actually now a side character, or even the Good Witch is now a side character. That is clearly, no question whatsoever, the witch is the main character in that. Where in the focus is on her, even though there's other important characters going on. Where in this one, the focus clearly isn't entirely on Morpheus, it's more on Neo. You know, Morpheus I don't even think comes in until like the end of the first third. Like, technically.
Well, but he's talking to him the whole time, being like, go here, do this, which is its own set of problems, because I think when I was watching it, I was pointing it out, I was like, how can these computer programs miss Neo simply...
Yeah, the cubicle wall and everything.
Walking through, I'm like, they're programs in this... How do you do that? Like, if you're a computer program, shouldn't you just have a system where you're just like, well, they're plugged into the Matrix. Why do you even need to physically find this guy if you can rewrite the program? Because she says, oh, you know, when you see glitches and this and that and you think it's a ghost, that's really the Matrix rewriting itself and doing that. Then why don't you just pull the plug on Neo, rewrite the program so he never existed within the Matrix, and everybody else goes on like not giving a shit?
Well, and this is kind of my other problem with it too, is that because a lot of people are saying, well, you're nitpicking, you're reading too much. How come you didn't question this in, stuff like this in The Dark Knight or something like that? Which, first of all, I did, but it
I did too.
Yeah, but it didn't ruin anything for me because the emotional focus was always there, and I think even people that like The Matrix are like, no, emotionally, there's nothing there. I mean, it's cool ideas, which they are. It's cool, really groundbreaking effects and action. But emotionally, you're not invested. I mean, even like diehard fans are
You're
like,
only emotionally invested in the way that Keanu Reeves' character is an everyman. And he's like a blank slate.
It's what you bring
so
to
you
it very
just
much, yeah.
He's like a blank slate, and
He's
you
the
just
Harry
throw
Potter.
yourself
He's the most boring
into
character
it.
in it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Harry Potter too, but
I mean, it is Harry Potter syndrome, though this predated Harry Potter by about a year, I think. So, but I don't know. I don't think I disliked the movie anywhere near as much as you did. But
when I first saw it, I thought it was okay, and the more I admit it could be the hype. I did like a whole editorial about this.
Well, it doesn't stay. I will say this.
It could be the way everybody was so insulted when I would just say, yeah, it never did much for me. I mean, like, everybody, fucking Dante Bosco, remember? It's like, really? He was just like, what are you? And that's always the look I got. I got just so sick of it.
I'm gonna have to go all Firelord.
It's like, I just got so sick of it. I'm finally like, you know what? It's not that great a film. I'm sorry. It changed some stuff, but it's not that great and blah, blah, blah. And really, I think when the hype dies down and everything, like, it's,
but there's
it's
always
passable,
films. There's
in
always
my
films
opinion.
like that. Some films just work on ideas.
The
Sometimes
ideas
you
are
just
cool.
don't get the complete package. Yes, you're not as emotionally invested, but there is an interesting conceit to that film that nobody ever really talks about, which is they're all in a soulless computer program and have been raised in this computer program from day one. I always looked at it like this. Of course they would talk like that. Of course they would have no emotion. They've all been being run by computer programs for the bulk of their lives.
But the computer programs are more interesting than them. Like, all the computers have more interesting personalities.
That's a failure of the sequel.
No, even the first one. The Oracle is
Okay.
a million times more interesting. Hugo Weaving is a million times more interesting. Like, half of those agents.
Okay, no. Here's the thing. Hugo Weaving's only interesting because he's chewing scenery. I don't get much emotion out of him, really, and the crazy until the sequels with the
No, come on. It's
laughs
like,
and
I need to leave. Because even though I'm a computer, I have want now. Which is explained in the Animatrix now. That's a whole other...
But what emotion is there? It's really all coming out through the acting. I think what your issue is the acting.
No, he says, I want out. Want or I'm done with this place. I'm angry with this place.
That's because he's a virus. And I will say this. I thought that was an interesting part of the movie, which is this idea that these humans being raised in this computer program are all kind of soulless and all talk like they're in a Shyamalan film. Which is another thing I'll say. It had the advantage of coming at a time when this Shyamalan style of acting wasn't as fucking annoying as it is now. We didn't have 20 of these films in a row where you're just like, use a contraction, have an emotion, dear God. Now with Avatar, now with like the last Airbender movie and all of these Shyamalan films,
the
and
Nolan
now
films as well,
the Nolan films to a degree.
But you never saw Interstellar.
I haven't seen Interstellar yet, but now with all of that, we can kind of look at it and be like, oh my God, I'm sick of this. But at the time, like, I was like, okay, it's actually kind of amusing to watch these, Keanu Reeves go, whoa. And like that, now it's worn out its welcome. So I'm wondering if some of this is in hindsight, because at the time I thought it was kind of cool.
No, there is some truth to that where it's like a lot of this talking, like I said, it didn't. Now you see it everywhere with the Nolan films and stuff like that, and it's not entirely bad because it's like, what are you against people being smart or learning something in a film or philosophical? No, please.
Well, it's not that they're smart; it's that there's no emotion.
No. But I mean, even films after The Matrix, it's more that film is still a visual medium. Say only what needs to be said.
Yeah.
Say what is going to stick with you.
I saw The Imitation Game, and Cumberbatch's performance had a lot more emotion in it, and he's a super genius who's also socially awkward, so it can be done.
Yeah, you know what I think happened? I think somewhere, and I think you can thank/blame The Matrix for this. The films being made with these comic book movies and stuff, the ones that are very long-winded, suddenly became analyses of the film you're watching while also being the film.
Oh Christ, you can throw Unbreakable in that list too.
Yeah, you can. Well,
this isn't a comic book movie. It's about comic book movies. Like,
no,
why don't you just make a comic book movie? That's interesting.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. And somewhere we got on this line where I think because for so long we have not had so much dialogue.
I enjoy Blade as a comic book movie, but it's also the Blade syndrome of its style over substance to the point. Well, it's just cooler if they have no emotion and wear sunglasses and all leather and don't say much of anything. And honestly, it's the Western. It's the Western archetype. Clint Eastwood walking around with 2 lines of dialogue. Which is why maybe I don't mind it as much. I mind it when they start then spouting off reams and reams of dialogue, because I'm just like, now what makes characters like that cool is they don't talk about
no, I'm totally with that.
But I didn't mind it as much in The Matrix because I thought there was more of a balance, and this may just be because the sequels just so overdid it. But
it is compared to definitely the sequels and compared to films now, it's something where it's like The Matrix both holds up a little better, but in my opinion, a little worse, because I am hearing these dialogues now that I'm like, oh Christ, this is where all these other films that talk.
Well, this was the dual reaction we had. Whereas I watched the first Matrix with you when we did the NC, and I came out of it and I'm like, okay, this didn't hold up as well as I thought it would. I still like it overall, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Meanwhile, you, for reasons I'll never comprehend, for years was going on about how Reloaded was the superior sequel and the better movie, and then we were watching Reloaded, and somewhere in the middle of all of this dialogue and nothing happened, you just went, yeah, this isn't holding up as well as
it was like a total switch.
So we each switched around.
Yeah, so now now I agree, it is 1, 2, 3.
There is one point, because you do bring up a good point, which is the Oracle seems to have personality. Smith, to some degree, has personality. I don't think as much as you claim, but at least not until the sequels. That I thought was cool about the movie, because you have these humans who are raised in this computer who are all computer-like. And then you have these computer programs who want to somehow break free of their programming and soullessness, and they have personality. And I guess that's where I thought it was fine in the first movie, because you could read into that. But then in the sequels, like, they never played it up enough. In some cases, they overplayed it with, I made a choice, and I'm gonna break free, and then they also underplayed it. Like, they didn't make that the focus.
And I think, if you're gonna throw in all these ideas and such, which, I mean, I think we both agree, the first film, has a lot of great ideas. I'll even argue the sequels have great ideas. Like, they actually do. But if you're gonna throw in so much talking and so much detail and try so hard to try to explain every tiny little thing, you're already kind of writing yourself into a corner, because unless you're J.R.R. Tolkien, who had, appendices up the wazoo of everything and had everything explained, which even then he had The Hobbit, which didn't entirely connect into the world.
Well, he wrote The Hobbit first.
Yeah,
so.
no, but that's why I mean, like, you're already writing yourself into a corner, because people are going to say, well, wait, what about this? Well, wait, what about that? If you're only going to rely on the detail, or you're going to rely on that the most, you're already kind of dooming yourself, because you have to be distracted by the emotional connection.
You're right, and that is part of the problem, I think, is tone. Some comic book movies can get away with giant errors just because you go into it with the tone that was a comic book movie. When you start getting into the Nolan films and stuff where it's like, no, this is important, this means something, we're going to say this is about philosophy and these big ideas. When you get into the nitty-gritty details of it and try to make it very self-important, you can do that. I don't have a problem with that. But you do open yourself up to people looking at it like, okay, well then this doesn't make sense. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, the first film, that was my biggest problem, is I still don't understand why you would have the Matrix created and need people to be sentient. I'm like, well, they're living off the bioenergy of humans. Fine. Your computers, you've managed to build this super network, these frickin' Cthulhu bots running around with their crazy tentacles, plug people in, unplug them. Why the hell do you just not take out the part of the brain that would figure out that you're in the Matrix, or give them a lobotomy and just live off our stupid dead body, like our stupid brain dead bodies?
Actually, that's one of my favorite things in the comments, was that there was about 12 different people that went, fool. Obviously, the reason that they have the Matrix is they list a reason, and then the other 12 people start off the exact same way, list an entirely different reason. Everyone has a different reason why.
I've seen every reason on the planet that's been given to me.
It's not in the movie.
None of them make sense, and it's not in the movie.
Yeah.
So if you want to justify it and say, well, this could be a reason why, that's fine.
If you have your theory, that's fine, but it's not.
In the movie.
They don't explain. The film clearly does not explain.
It's a huge problem for me, because I'm just like, why then? Or when Neo gets unplugged and then he's flushed down the toilet, I'm like, why don't you keep them in, whenever somebody gets out of there, instead of flushing them away, why don't you just keep them in that pod, seal it up, let them die? If you're where there's people out there building a Zion, why are you kicking them out? I don't.
Which again, really, all of that wouldn't
our
matter.
Supercomputer Matrix.
Yeah, all of that wouldn't matter so much if they didn't put so much focus on all the details, and if there was enough emotional connection to the main characters.
It's the double-edged sword, whereas something like Dark City doesn't give a shit about the details.
Well, no, it's vague. It's very vague.
Which is almost a problem. You can look at it and be like, what the hell is this film even about? In the end, it's not here, it's here. Like,
it is very vague, but
that's the double-edged sword.
but that's kind of what I liked about it, too, is that allows you to bring something to it. What is, it's not, I guess, not quite answered, but it's raising that question. But it's not trying to answer it for you either. That's why I felt The Matrix was. It was bringing up questions, but it was trying to answer them at the same time. And I don't know if that was necessarily
I don't think
the best
it
way
answered
to do it.
that much in the first film, which is why I like the first film.
No. Like I said, it was kind of trying to. Like, it brings a question, but then it's like, maybe it's in this direction we're trying to point over here. Like, really over here. Like, really over... We're not saying the answer. We're not showing you the answer, but it's maybe over there. It's like, that seems like that's the
If you approach it as a comic book style movie that's very stylistic and bringing up a bunch of philosophical questions, it's an open and shut case of here's a beginning, middle, end, I think it works fine. I think a lot of the problems the film has is actually now because it's attached to the inferior sequels.
I don't know. I've had issues with it, but I will admit I do not. I don't hate the Matrix. I don't hate the first one.
And again, a lot of things that we complained about too was also the first to do it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to that.
And
it has inspired
the bullet time thing, the style and everything. We grew sick of it because Hollywood rips itself off constantly. But I mean, in 1999, that was hot shit. I remember being blown away, like, holy crap. And then by the end of the third film, when they did bullet time for the 180th time, I was like, seeing it, like, just done.
Yeah. No, and when people are like, how dare you pick on the effects? Of course they're going to be dated. I know. I really know, guys. There are very few effects that can hold up so well that it's like years
Some
later.
still surprisingly held up.
Yeah, no, there's actually one or two that are pretty decent, but yeah, again, it's A, that's for comedy, and B, it's more sort of taking people down a notch when they say it's flawless. No, there's a lot of problems with it. Like there's really problems with any film.
I don't think anybody's saying it's flawless.
Oh,
Really?
yeah. Again, go to YouTube. There's a lot of
Just say the words Keanu Reeves is the Messiah and tell me that's flawless.
right. That's always my thing when people can be like, it's a masterpiece. It's incredible. How dare you not like just Keanu Reeves is the Messiah.
And maybe, just maybe, you could get away with that in the first one, but as the sequels go,
Man, not for me. You couldn't for me, but...
Do we want to talk about the sequels now?
I don't have much except that I still think there's good ideas.
And Highway Chase was cool. That's all I took out of the second one.
Watching them again, like I said, there's... It kind of like maybe with Lucas and the prequels, like there's seeds of good ideas here. And some are even sort of explored a little bit, but... somehow it gets lost way too much in its own being full of itself and being so detailed and being so Shyamalized.
And then there was the twist that everybody saw coming that never happened.
That never happened.
Which is, what I thought at the end was that they were still in another Matrix. That's
why everybody thought.
That the Matrix was clever enough to have done a double trap where they think they're out, like when you have a dream and you think you've woken up in the dream and you wake up the third time and realize, oh shit, I never got up and went to work, now I gotta do that all over again.
Wouldn't that explain, like I said, it would explain
everything.
Explain all the plot holes in it as well, the stuff that doesn't make sense.
And the stupidest thing I ever read was some people replied with, no, I mean they couldn't have done that because that would have been too obvious. And I'm like, so what they
Not as
went
obvious
with,
as he's Jesus.
So what they went with Space Jesus was better. Yes, it may have been obvious, but it would have made sense. Unlike what they went with, which makes no sense. I still can't figure out. I'm like, where did he get this power from?
You know what? Actually, no, after editing it over and over and over and watching these goddamn speeches over and over and over, they did explain it.
Oh, do tell.
No, okay.
Please.
So it's the anomaly, Neo's the anomaly.
Yeah.
That every time they create this world, there's this perfect one that can do all these incredible things. Because of that, he has what they call like a spark of the original computer energy. So that's how he can connect with them and stuff like that.
What sort of sense does that make?
I'm not saying it makes sense, but it is technically explained. So it's not just he can hold out his hand and they disappear because he's Jesus. Is that he has some connection with the spark or whatever, the same energy that the machines are made out of. So he is, I guess, in spirit, half man, half machine.
If you plug me into the internet and then unplug me, I can't throw my hand at my hard drive and turn it on.
I didn't say it makes sense. I'm just saying that it is technically explained. In fact, there's actually a few jokes I took out because of that, because when I listened to one of the speeches, I'm like, oh, and I put together, I'm like, okay, well that kind of explains them as, okay, I'm just gonna take out some of these jokes, just one or two.
As far as I'm concerned,
that's good explanation.
As far as I'm concerned, that's just saying a wizard did it. That's just magic. Well, he's got a spark of the original. What?
Yeah, no,
really?
I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying that they did explain it. But it still makes like very little sense, But
if he was half cyborg, maybe, and had a Wi-Fi system.
Well, I don't get how it's
maybe
in
if they cracked it, maybe if they X-rayed him and they're like, you have like a half Cybertronic brain or something. But then why would any of them? They're human.
Yeah, no, and how can Smith hack into an actual mind and say, and like take him over forever or whatever?
I guess if you want to argue that there are some machine parts somewhere in the head if you have to jack in, but they never went into any detail about that.
Yeah, they went into detail about all these other things, but never quite that. So,
if that's the case, and if there still is something left, and he can control the computers, why can't the Matrix reverse that and be like, hey, we know where this asshole is because he can control. Like we sense him.
Yeah, no, again preaching to the choir there.
Stupidest computer ever.
So yeah, I mean, it's the sequels. I still think have some good ideas and some decent philosophies that do not gel together at all. Get way too sidetracked. Where the first one you could all get sidetracked too, but it's still whenever they go off on a speech, it's still we're talking about the Matrix and the goal is to make you a better leader, even though we're not really teaching you anything that we're not just saying over and over and over.
I will say this. I was surprised because I was dreading watching the third film, like hardcore. I'm just like, because I remember sitting in the theater and being so bored, particularly at the Zion battle, which went on for fucking ever. And that strangely, if you look for the silver lining and things, I came out of watching that battle actually way more impressed with it on the small screen than I ever did on the big screen.
I was going to say, you were more impressed with that than I was.
On the big screen, it's a bit of a like jumbled sort of train wreck. On the small screen, and we didn't watch it on your TV, which is bigger. We watch it on mine, which is smaller. And I could make out all the little details and see how well composed the shots were. And I'm like, all right, this is really not only a technical feat, but it's really gorgeous in some scenes. And like, now that I can see everything, I'm not stuck watching it on a giant 80-foot tall screen or something. I'm like, this actually works.
See,
and I actually enjoyed it. Now, the
fascinating.
difference is I had no connection with a single character. And that was its failing point, because I'm just like looking at it and going, ooh, wow, this is pretty, and oh, that's a cool shot, that's a cool... But if you're talking about like getting wrapped up in the emotion, like when the leader of Zion dies or whatever, when frickin' Wesley Crusher like tries to save the day, I just could have cared less. Which, that was another point we were talking about. In somewhere in the middle of the battle, I remember turning to you and I was like, I just realized something. In like Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back in Star Wars, you had Porkins, you had Biggs, you had Dak, Wedge Antilles, and then unnamed guys, like in Jedi in particular. There's a ton of just unnamed guys, and I was just like, to this day, I can remember nearly every single line those guys had.
Red 2.
Good shot, Red 2. There's too many of them. I'm hit.
I'm pancake face.
Yeah. I remember all of these guys, and I'm like, I turned to you, I was just like, I had more emotion for people that I had known for 5 minutes in one of those movies, Jedi Empire, because I think Wedge is really the only one to carry over of the secondary pilots, than I did for characters that are in the Battle of Zion that have been there either since the first Matrix movie or the second. And I'm like, and these films I think are longer than Star Wars. I'm like, that is spending 6-7 hours with secondary characters that I don't give a crap about. How do you do that?
Yeah,
like, how is that physically? I was like, Return of the Jedi, the guy who flies into the Executor and blows it up. I felt more sorry for him and his 2 lines than I did for some of these characters. And I don't know if it's like 80s character actors.
We talked about this with Brad, that there was something in the 80s, and particularly the 80s, where the side characters
had personality somehow, even with no lines.
Yeah, it's like all the side characters in the 80s were played by really good character actors, and that's not around as much anymore.
Well, and it reminded me of a story. Apparently, the guy who played Porkins in Star Wars was all upset because he found out his call sign was Porkins. He's like, "Oh, I get it, because I'm fat. What the fuck?"
I always thought it was a very insulting name.
And Lucas came up to him and apparently explained it. And he's like, "Listen, I know it sounds bad, but there's this whole backstory," and he relayed this entire backstory to this guy, and he agreed to do it. I have no idea if that story is entirely true or not. I remember reading it somewhere. It makes me wonder if Lucas and other directors, at least in films like that, do that with side characters and are just like, yeah, like here's a little backstory, like a primer, like this is where you come from. I wonder if that informs their performances at all, or if that's just a coincidence that it only happened with that one guy. But I feel like and maybe the Wachowskis did. Maybe they're just not good directors, and maybe they couldn't teach these people how to act, or they sucked the life out of them. But I wonder if maybe they just never came up to these people like, this is what your character is. This is your backstory. You got pulled from the Matrix, you did this and this.
Or maybe they did too much of it, that'd be my guess.
Or maybe they did too much.
Everything's so serious. Well, now that I know I have to carry the weight, it's like, it can be either. It's just...
But whatever it is, yeah, like there was something about all of the pilots in the Star Wars movies and in other films kind of from the 80s and early 90s that I got way more attached to them than I ever did. Honestly, as stupid as something like Independence Day is, I got more attached to everybody in that movie than I did in the Matrix movies, like in the battle at the end of like Independence Day. And I'm like, you have to somehow give secondary characters actual character to make me care. Because otherwise it was just, here's a bunch of people just getting blown up.
The last thing I'll say, because I'm sure we rambled out enough about this, but it's something that I think we both noticed about all the Matrix films that is a really good thing, and certainly you don't see that often, maybe more nowadays, but definitely not back then. wide range of races in that movie. Like,
It
count,
was
count the
stra-
white people.
it was strange,
The main
yeah.
characters are white.
It was
Which you could argue, well, hey, fair enough. Although Will Smith, I guess, was supposed to be the lead. How much better would these movies have been? If
oh
Will
my
Smith was
god,
the
if
lead?
Will Smith had been the lead, that would have been amazing.
Instead of Will, it'd be just a damn. It'd be so much more charismatic. But
It'd be raining bullet time here in New York.
But yeah, like it's you look at just
Welcome to Zion.
there's like a few more maybe in the first film, but in the second and third, it's like when it's count the white people, they're either the two leads or they're the bad guys. Like everyone
And I will
else,
note that it's the two white people that are the most boring.
Yes, honestly. So that is something I really, really admired about all the films, is that they weren't like, okay, let's just make them all white, or once in a while throw in a token black person or Asian person. So like, they're all different ethnicities, and I really like that. I thought that was really nice, keeping that variety in there. It's just honestly more realistic, because there are just so many different.
I do remember us talking about that. I was like, that was something I really did appreciate about the movie. I was like, well, here's a wide range. And it makes sense if you're pulling people from out the entire world of the Matrix.
Yeah.
So it's still annoying that it's still two white leads, but I'll take baby steps. And really, when it's all said and done, it's the old thing about when we were talking about Song of the South. It's like, yes, Song of the South is racist, but I will also note that any child that watches that is way more interested in Uncle Remus and his stories than any of those two boring white kids.
Yeah, than any of the white
So there is an
people.
aspect of it that at least the ethnic characters have actual character.
Yeah, it's very much. Well, the same thing we can take out of this is The Matrix is our generation's Song of the South. Groundbreaking effects at the time. Even some interesting philosophy.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. So, yeah, this is pretty much our thoughts on The Matrix. Like I said, I mean, I think at best
I like the first movie. It's got some problems, but the sequels, no.
I think at best it's okay, but I don't think it's as rewatchable anymore. For me, it wasn't even that rewatchable to begin with, but it's like it's some cool action. Cool
I had fun
ideas.
rewatching it. I still think the biggest sin is that Zion is incredibly boring. Whenever they were outside the Matrix,
To me, it's that the one is incredibly boring.
yeah, but whenever they were outside the Matrix, I could have cared less. Whenever they're in the Matrix, and that goes for the first movie, the best scenes in the first movie are when they're in the Matrix. So that's where all the fun is.
Yeah. So, that's kind of our real thoughts on that, just us rambling on. Join us next time. This guy is going to be, he's going to hand a big slab of angry for Mamma Mia, so we will see you at that one.